have that one friend who like always looks super cute, or like he just always looks like a stud, like no matter what, even if he's just wearing like a super simple outfit. Well, for those of you who aren't that friend, perhaps I can help you out today. So I know some of you are thinking that this might not apply to you. However, I do know a few things about people in general. We like to be complimented. We generally feel better about ourselves when we look better. And last but not least, we never know who we're going to meet. Whether it's a potential best friend, a potential employer, a potential significant other, it never hurts to look a little polished. So that friend that I mentioned a little bit ago, well, many of my friends would label me that friend. But aside from my own personal experience in this area, I got information from the New York Times, CNN, fashion and design websites, and a book written by New York Times bestselling author Jennifer L. Scott. So through this research and through my own personal experience, there are 3 key elements to style: simplicity, utilizing neutrals, and the rule of the third piece. And a disclaimer, I'm not trying to get you to change your personal style. Style is super unique to everybody. That's something to be celebrated. These are just tools that you can incorporate into your own personal style. Without further ado, the first key is simplicity. Okay, and the nice thing about this one is it's very simple. It's very easy when your goal is to just have a simple outfit. It's easier to pick out fewer things, fewer articles of clothing. Also, nothing looks more sloppy and distracting than when you have too many focal points, too many colors, too many things going on in your outfit. And we'll discuss how simplicity is incorporated into the next few steps as we go along. Another cool thing about simplicity, which you may not have thought about, is it doesn't just incorporate your outfits, but you can simplify your wardrobe as well. And at first, when I heard the idea of simplifying my wardrobe, I was like, well, if I have fewer options, that's not good, right? But actually, a article posted by the New York Times talks about this. It's called the paradox of choice. And basically what the study is saying is that when you have more options, it leads to fewer choices and more prolonged choices. So the vice versa of that is that fewer choices lead to more and better choices, or fewer options. Just some famous examples of people who do this. Steve Jobs, which I'm sure you've all seen. That's okay. So Steve Jobs wears, which I'm sure you've all seen, he wears jeans, a black turtleneck, and sneakers every day. All of his presentations for like the iPhone and the iPod, all of his Apple presentations, he wore the same outfit. Also, Christopher Nolan, who is a famous director, he wears a gray blazer, a blue shirt, and gray pants almost every single day. And also Michael Kors, who's a fashion designer, wears white t-shirt, black blazer, and jeans. So very simple, but at the same time, I'm not trying to tell you that you should wear the same outfit every day. I don't think most of us would enjoy that. But simplicity does have benefits. So another thing, if you take a look at, especially Mr. Lee Holsworth over here, if you look at his outfit, it's consisted of one key element, which is the next element, which is neutrals. So for most of you, this might be a new term in this context. Neutrals are denim, cream, white, brown, black, olive green, colors like that, basically colors that just complement everything. And the advantage to having neutrals and to having a wardrobe that is mainly consisted of neutrals is that all your clothes match each other. So for example, all of these shirts match with each of these pants and each skirt. Each of these sweaters goes with the dress and with both dresses, each tank top. For the guys, each of those shirts and the sweater goes with each of the pants. And not saying that your wardrobe needs to be this small, but if we're going with the simplicity and lowering the time it takes to pick out an outfit in the morning, which I'm sure we'd all like to decrease that time, having a wardrobe that is mainly neutrals will significantly improve your time I'm getting ready. Okay. Also, this is called a capsule wardrobe, in case you're wondering, or a minimalist wardrobe. This is really popular in countries like France, where they literally have like 4 shirts, 4 pair of pants. Women have a dress, men maybe have a suit that they just rotate and wear throughout the week. And that's partially a culture thing, but also it's really nice when you can just pick out a sweater and a pair of pants and you know that they're going to match each other because they're all neutrals. So now that we've looked at the first 2, let's look at the third one, which is the rule of the third piece. And this one is my favorite because having the third piece, which for example would be like a scarf or a overshirt or a sweater or a beanie or a necklace, just having a third piece to your outfit makes you look more polished. Actually, a study I found said that psychologists have proven that 3 is the most aesthetically pleasing number. So we see this in interior decorating, we see this in websites and advertising, we see this in writing and in speaking. We try to keep things to 3 points, 3 focal points. Yeah, so when you have your third piece, so this guy, if he was, I mean, he looks nice in general, but if he just had the shirt and the jeans, it'd be a pretty simple outfit, but throwing over the third piece just makes it look a little more put together, like he put a little more effort in. This girl here, she could have just worn the leggings and the striped shirt, would have been a fine outfit, but having the pop of color with the burgundy and having the third piece just adds a little extra effort and a lot of, it just makes it look better overall. So to review, the 3 key elements of style are simplicity, utilizing neutrals, and the rule of the third piece. And once again, style is unique to each individual. Not trying to get anybody to change their personal style, but whether you dress very casually or you dress very edgy or preppy, whatever your personal style is, you can use these 3 rules in your everyday life.
Alright, so I'm going to tell you guys a story of why you should never pray for patience, because God will give it to you in a way that you may not want. So this summer, I was working at a summer camp, and me and one of my other staff members began at the beginning of summer praying for patience. We're like, you know, we really wanted patience. Working with high schoolers is rough. And we decided that we'd pray every day for patience. And sure enough, God sent us a group that taught us patience. They would not listen, they were rude, they would insult our clothing, they would insult how we did things. They were just very rude. And it was a rough week to work with them. And so we'd stop in the middle of the workday as we were really frustrated and we'd pray for patience. And so at the end of the week, we kind of reflected on the week and said, you know, we really learned patience, but let's never pray for patience again. That was too much. So she made this offhanded comment to me about, you know, wouldn't it be funny if one of our groups, one of the weeks, had a girl in it that was named Patience. Well, sure enough, the next week, we're talking to all the girls, a bunch of the girls, and this one girl was real quiet, and we're like, hey, what's your name? And she turns around, and she's like, oh, I'm Patience. And both of our jaws literally hit the floor. We started freaking out. I backhanded this other staff member, and because I was like freaking out, and it was just really cool to see how when we asked for something, and then we had like kind of had to go through it, and then we had this kind of sign from God that, you know, He really is there, and He really did show us and teach us patience. So this summer, so that was just one of my many stories and experiences from this past summer. And the reason I'm sharing this with you guys today is because I believe that we have a great opportunity to love and serve others right here in our own backyard. And you guys can be a part of that. So all of my information comes from my own experience this summer and the organization that I worked with website. I hope today to give you a little taste of the hardest, most exciting, and life-changing summer of my life. I will kind of start off with the basics of what we were doing and why we were there. Then I will tell you about some of the people and experiences that I had. And then finally, I'll talk about the organization that I work for and give you an opportunity to serve with them also. So I spent this entire summer in New Orleans, or the Big Easy. This is the skyline, and this saint symbol is everywhere. I was there from May 25th to August 3rd. This is my staff of 5. We were all pretty crazy. This is during crazy kickball at staff training. In total, all the staffs at all the camps, there were 123 staff at 23 camps with one mission. We worked in the lower 9th ward, which is right here. It's one of the hardest hit areas by Katrina, and it's also considered to be one of the safest places during hurricanes because of the levees that are built right along this canal and along the river. So some people believe that New Orleans flooded because Hurricane Katrina, because it's on the coast. Well, there's miles and miles of marsh between the Gulf of Mexico and New Orleans, and so it didn't flood because of the sea flooding it or anything. It was because New Orleans is between a lake and a river, and it's 8 feet below sea level. And this picture kind of shows you all the flooding, and most of New Orleans was at least like 5 or 6 feet underwater. So where we were working in the lower 9th ward was the heaviest hit area, and normally it's not because of the levees, but you can see this, the blacker it is or the redder it is, the more flooding there was. There was about 10 to 12 feet of water. And the reason that is because someone didn't tie their barge down correctly, and the barge slammed into the levees and broke the levees, and so then all the water from the little canal flooded into the area. So over the summer, we had a different group of high schoolers come in each week. These were the 7 groups that I worked with over the summer. They were all pretty crazy and a lot of fun. We did mostly construction work, like building a playground. We refurbished the outside of this building. This is the before picture, and then this is the after one. That's after 7 weeks of work with lots of high schoolers and scary situations where I let them use power saws. It was kind of disturbing. We also did a lot of community outreach, like picking up trash, and we built decks and ramps, like wheelchair ramps for people who couldn't get into their house because they only had stairs but they were in a wheelchair. And fun fact, I kind of created this number after I saw this picture, but we mixed over 2.5 tons of concrete over the entire summer. So now that you kind of know the basics of why we were there, I'll share a little more about like what it was like for me there. So a day in the life of a team effort staff member was we'd get up about 6 a.m., go downstairs from our bunkhouse, and you're staying inside of a church, and we would have staff depot. Then we would fill up the water coolers, we would make breakfast, and then we'd feed breakfast. This is all of the campers eating breakfast. And then we'd go to the work site, which was about an hour away because traffic in New Orleans is so crazy. We'd spend from about 9 to 4 at the work site working, doing the projects and stuff. And then we'd drive back, which then took 2 hours because rush hour traffic in New Orleans is 10 times worse than anywhere I've ever been. Then we'd make dinner and feed them dinner, and then we'd go and prep for chapel and have chapel each night. This is one of the staff talking during chapel. And then we'd go to bed and repeat it all the next day. So when we did have free time, which was rare, we would always find the strangest places to nap. And in all of the pictures, except this one, he is actually sleeping. This was Jared, he was on my staff. But I had a Snap story series where it was called Nap As You Go. And he would literally nap everywhere, and it was quite funny. So something else I got to do was I made new families. I made 3 new families this summer, and the first one was my staff family. I became so close with all of the people that I worked with. They became like my brothers and sisters. We grew together, we cried together, we worked hard together, we stayed up late together, we shopped at Walmart and Sam's Club together. It was crazy, and a lot of them don't live up here, so I don't get to see them, and I won't get to see them for a while, which kind of makes me sad. The second family I made was the community there. These 2 pictures are the 2 pastors that we worked with, and then this far one over here, that's our contractor. His name was Robert, and he was probably the most patient man I've ever met. He worked with high schoolers who screwed things up all the time, and he never complained. But they kind of adopted us into their community as these 5 college-age kids who didn't really know what was happening and didn't really know the situation. They just kind of adopted us into their family. So the third family I made was the groups that came, and this was one group in particular that I really connected with. It was our third week of camp, and they were from Houston, Texas. They just kind of immediately adopted me into their family, and the week was really hard. We had two of their people go to the ER, one right after the other, and then the third day one of our staff had to go to the ER, so it was kind of a crazy week, and they just kind of adopted me into their family, and they still actually send me letters, and every time I get one, I like bawl my eyes out because it's the most precious thing ever. So now that you guys know a little bit more about what it was like there and the experiences I had, I'm going to tell you a little more about team effort. So you may be asking, what is team effort? I don't know what this is. I've never heard of this. Maybe you have, and that's really cool. But team effort, this is their mission statement from their website. Team effort is a non-profit, interdenominational Christian missions organization that has been providing life-changing, eye-opening, and faith-building missions experiences for youth for over 20 years. We offer opportunities for youth groups to put their faith into action through challenging and rewarding missions projects. And I think that really, in a paragraph, sums up what team effort does. They have over 20 camps located all over the United States, and for whatever reason my computer thought I lived in Kansas, so that's why that blue dot's there. But they're mostly on the East Coast, but there are some farther west. Right down here is where I was. And they actually just opened up a new camp in Baton Rouge after all the disasters there. So, lastly, you may be wondering, how can I get involved? And one of the ways you can do that is you can come talk to me. I'm a recruiter here at Grace College because Team Effort is located in Jacksonville, Florida, and so it's really hard for them to send staff up here to recruit people. So you can come talk to me. I have information, I have applications, and then you can also go online at teameffort.org and find more information there. And there's also an online application this year, so you can just apply or you can request more information. So, in conclusion, I appreciate you all listening to me ramble on about my summer and in New Orleans and how I got to work with the people and do construction and work with high school students and the people I got to meet and the experiences I got to have with Team Effort. This summer was truly a life-changing experience full of challenge and adventure. I built relationships I never thought I would and met people that I never thought I would. I gained more experience this summer than I could ever in a college class or ever, I think, in one setting. So I sincerely hope that someday you guys can have an experience like that, maybe with Team Effort, maybe with someone else.
Did you know that Africa has only 25 doctors per 100,000 people? So to put that into perspective, the United States and other industrialized countries have about 330 doctors per 100,000 people. So that means that we have over 1,000% more doctors here than in Africa. And did you know that over 50% of the world's population lives within 100 miles of a coastline, like an ocean coastline? And did you know that Mercy Ships is an organization which transforms cruise ships into floating hospitals to provide medical care to some of the world's poorest people? So here's a picture of the current ship, which is called the Africa Mercy, which is currently in the country of Benin, Africa. And so it's important to realize that we here have adequate access to medical care. I mean, there's a nurse on campus and several hospitals and emergency centers within a half-hour drive from here. And I also assume that the last time we stepped foot into like a hospital or a doctor's office or even a nursing home, we didn't really think anything of it. But it's just important, I think, to realize how truly blessed we are here in America with our medical care, and to realize that many people in Africa do not have this opportunity. I personally have known about the organization of Mercy Ships for about 4 years now, and someone actually just told me about it randomly. They were actually doing a speech on it in their high school speech class, and so ever since then I was just really interested in the organization. And I read the book called Ships of Mercy, which is written by the founder of Mercy Ships, Don Stevens, and just about like how he dreamt up the idea and how he put it into actuality. And some other information in this speech comes from the Mercy Ships website. So today I will share with you first about the ministry of Mercy Ships, And then I will tell you about the people who make mercy ships possible. And finally, I will share with you about the different facilities on board the ship. So first, the Ministry of Mercy ships. As I said before, the ship will dock at a port, like currently it's in Benin, and it ports for about 9 months in one location, and then it will travel to another location for about 3 months at a time then, and then during that time it will reload with supplies and travel, obviously. But, so before it gets to the next port, during those 3 months of traveling, it will set up what's called screening centers, where people in the country can come to the center and they'll get screened because there's even more need for medical care in Africa than the ship can provide, so they have to turn several people away, like thousands of people away every time they port. And they always try to treat the most threatening cases, which are maxillofacial surgeries, which would be things with like your face and neck area, as well as tumors, plastic reconstructive surgeries, which usually would be like a cleft lip or cleft palate surgery. They do eye surgery and women's health surgeries are the main things that they'll do on the ship. So the ship also, because they know they're going to be leaving in a few months, they try to set up things so that the people in the nations can be better off than when the ship arrived. So they will train and mentor locals who want to be in the medical field, so they'll train like midwives, nurses, even doctors and surgeons, just so that they can have better care once they leave. They also donate medical tools and resources to the people so that they can just have more modern equipment and things to use. They also set up what's called HOPE centers, which is an acronym for Hospital Outpatient Extension. And so this would be places where people can go if they were on board the ship already and had a surgery, but they need somewhere to stay until they're fully recovered. They can go to one of these HOPE centers for an extended period of time. The Mercy ships also tries to build better medical facilities and even to reconstruct medical hospitals and facilities that are currently near where they're boarding. So now that you understand the mission of Mercy ships, I will share with you about the volunteers who make this mission possible. So everyone who does work on the ship is a volunteer, and so you can volunteer as long as you are over 18, and so they obviously need all of the medical professionals, but they also need many hospitality members, such as like cooks and cleaning people. Excuse me. They also need boat operators to know how to like sail the ship and do like the engineering and the heating and everything like that. And also, they need school professionals because there's this is really cool. There's actually a school on board the ship for kindergarten through 12th grade. So if you like are a family, your children can go to school and actually graduate high school on the ship. Also, the volunteers pay their own way. So this is kind of a chart showing how much it costs per month for a volunteer. So like the tier 1 nations are labeled down here, and these are just like the already industrialized nations like America. And the tier 2 nations would be like the poorer third world more nations, and so they get like a half price rate. And so here you can see, like, if you're serving on board the ship for less than 3 months, and you're from America, it would cost you $700 a month. And that just goes for, like, your food and your room and things like that. You also have to go through a training session, which is held in Lindale, Texas. And if you're serving short term, you do a class called Foundations of Mercy, which is a 5-day training class where they just talk about, like, the ship mainly and safety precautions and like how you'll get there and just more logistical things. But if you want to serve for over 6 months at a time, then you do a 5-week-long training session, which is called onboarding, and in that one you actually take a trip to Africa for 2 weeks just to experience the culture before you go on board the ship. So now since you understand the volunteers on the ship, I will tell you about the ship itself. The ship has several different places and spaces for the crew and the patients. obviously there's a hospital, which is very state-of-the-art. Like, you could find basically anything that you'd find here in America in a hospital, from surgery rooms to digital imagery to recovery rooms, just anything you could really find there. There's also like the bedrooms and the mini apartments. So if you are a family living on board the ship, you will have your own apartment, which would be like these two rooms here. So you can see they have different bedrooms and like a living area and small kitchen. But if you're a single person, you'd live in something more like this, kind of more like our dorm room setup with about 6 other people, and then you also have like a living room, kitchen, and each of the rooms also have a porthole to the outside of the ship. Some other rooms and spaces on the ship, there's a cafeteria, a library, like a study lounge, a store so you can buy clothing and food. There's a hair salon and an exercise room. And there's also a Starbucks on board the ship. So one cool fact is, I know last year it was in Madagascar, it was actually the first Starbucks in Madagascar, if you count like the ocean for it, so I thought that was pretty cool. So like it like honestly is like a really small community, like a small town to live in. So to conclude, I have shared with you the ministry of Mercy Ships, the people who make Mercy Ships possible, and the different facilities on board the ship. So now, as you can tell, Mercy Ships has literally saved many people's lives, and the best part is, like, we all can be a part of it if we choose to be. Like, we may not feel as though it is reasonable to travel to Africa right now, but maybe you could donate financially or know someone who could, or even simply sharing with others about this organization. And finally, I think it is just very important to humbly realize how blessed we are with medical care in America, and just to contrast that with the people in Africa. Okay, so how many of you have moved before? Some people might not have. Okay, the majority of you. So growing up, my family moved a whole bunch when I was younger. We moved to Indiana once, but that was it. We lived there for like a year. But we lived in the same house for 11 years. And then we just moved when I was the end of my freshman year. And this move was actually a big blessing for my family because I'll give you a little background of my life. So I grew up with my mom and my sister. And my mom, her name's Anne. She's a hairdresser, and she works 2 full days, 2 12-hour days. And I have a younger sister. Her name is Maddie. She's a sophomore in high school right now. And my mom and my dad actually, they got a divorce when I was like 6 years old. And it was because my dad had a drinking problem. He was a medic in the Army, and like if you can imagine, he probably saw some things that he couldn't forget. And so he developed a drinking problem. And it's been very emotional today. He actually passed away when I was in the 7th grade. And our house went into foreclosure. Sorry. When I think I was 8. And we actually got to live in that house for free for 6 years, which doesn't really happen, but basically the bank had no recollection that that house even existed. So it was like, we seriously just like lived there for free for 6 years. And it was like that helped, like, I don't remember like growing up and not having things. My mom, like, we never went without things. I played like club sports. I played club softball, club soccer. I had nice clothes. I'm really close to my extended family. And when Anna gave that speech about me at the beginning of this like class, she said like my whole family lives on the same street, and we do. And actually, like, this is when we moved to that street. So my grandma is actually the one that lives, like, the house that my entire, like, all my uncles and aunts grew up in is the house that my grandma still lives in today. And I have 5 uncles and 2 aunts, and 3 out of my 5 uncles are married, and I'm really close to 2 of my aunts. They're like my second mom, and one of them lives next door, and one of them lives down the street. And my uncle, who's like been kind of like my father figure, he doesn't actually live on the street, but he lives a street down. And his name, I know, right? So far. His name is John, and he's always been like the one that's he's been like my spiritual leader, and so this house that I live in, it actually was owned by one of the cousins in our family, but they're like second cousins, so yes, they were still family, but we weren't really close to them, and they actually, I don't know how to say this without being like sounding really horrible, but they their parent, my cousin's parents, she's like my second cousin, they both were like drug addicts, if that makes sense, and like, so like the walls were stained yellow with like nicotine because they both smoked. They had like 5 cats that ran around. They didn't really care. The siding on the house was completely damaged. They didn't get a new roof for like 4 years. The floors in all the bathrooms, like if you stepped on them in the wrong way, like you could have fallen through them. It's like surprised they didn't. They knocked out walls that were like support systems to the house, and it was stupid. Like there's like this pantry and then this closet that are back to back in my house, and they knocked out that wall so they could make like a tunnel because they were too lazy to walk around to get to the kitchen. They just had to walk straight through from the door. And so like that supporting wall like was so thin, I guess, like my uncle said it could have collapsed. And so that house went into foreclosure too. And by the time when we decided that we needed to move, my mom was so in denial about it. She did not want to. And she didn't know where we were going to go. And this house, showed up, and we walked through it. My mom was like, no way. This is disgusting. I don't want to live on the same street as my family. Like, that's no privacy. This is horrible. I don't want to do it. And my uncle instead brought me and my aunt to go look through it because my mom refused to go. So my aunt and I are very similar. We're both visionary people. And I walked through, and it was gross. I wish I had pictures, but we don't have any digital ones. We only have like this book that is like the before and after. But it was gross. There was holes in the wall from where they like nailed things in like odd places. Like their youngest daughter was like, she drew everywhere on the walls. Like they had no boundaries. And I just, like my aunt left and she was like, I could just see this house being somewhere where you guys could really settle down. And my mom, I wish she could tell you guys the story because she'll tell you how like when she sent the message to my uncle, she wasn't thinking. He said, the house is up for this price. You either take it now or leave it. And she says all the time, like, I sent it without thinking, and I just said, yes, I'll take it. And she felt sick, she said, like, after she sent it, because it's not something she wanted to do, but she went about it anyway. And from that point on, I have a bunch of older cousins, all my uncles, family friends. My Uncle Don that I was talking about, we have like a family business, Don Bacon Appliance. So the street with everybody's name, all the police in all our township went to like rename it to our street name, like Bacon Street, which is a joke. But like they all helped us. Basically, they gutted out the entire house. We got new floors, new painting on the wall. Another one of my uncle owns a painting business. The other one owns a roofing business, and they, in their own free time, free no charge, they basically gave us a new house. And the last day of my freshman year, I got out of school early because I had an exam, and we got out like at 1. And when I got home, my cousins came over and picked me up, and I just started taking everything out of my my room, and we moved into the house. And we bought that house in like December, and it was, I don't know, it was like an 8-month process to get this house to be what it is now. And I didn't ever think that I would live on the street as my family, because at one point when I was growing up, it was only like 4 people in the cul-de-sac, and now it's the entire street. And we close off our street and have like block parties and like do all these fun things, and it's kind of scary if you don't like know my family. But this is home, and it's weird because I don't remember like my other house that much in a sense, because it's kind of like there's bad memories in the house just because of like what I had to go through as a kid. But my mom, she'll say she's never had more peace about a house before, and it's a place where I don't really see us living anywhere else. And I appreciate it because my family went above and beyond helping us. Like I said, my uncle owns an appliance business, and he gave us a bunch of new appliances for free. We got like a new kitchen, and it's just great. And it's small, but it fits my family. So yes, overall, I don't know if anybody else can relate, but that's kind of like one of those testimonies for my family, because it just shows how much like God had my mom
my mom's like financial situation in the Palm Museum, and he like helped us get from that situation to like this peaceful and calming situation that we are in now, and I appreciate it every day. So, thank you.
I'm gonna quickly tune first,
Oh.
if that's okay. Ooh, wow.
Chrissy, you're on.
Alrighty, so what you heard was certainly not the best violin playing you've ever heard in your life. But what you did hear was the ending portion of Concerto No. 2 in G major by Seitz, who is a musical composer. It sounded pretty complicated, right? Well, here's the thing. Before this weekend, I had not picked up my violin in 10 months. How am I able to recall and play entire pieces in just 2 hours of practice? Well, it all stems from the Suzuki method that my teacher used to teach me the violin, and the benefits that playing this instrument give me. So all of you have practiced something in your lives, whether it's drilling your soccer footwork to score a good goal, or exercising your eye-hand coordination as you play Mario Kart for hours. And by practicing any particular skill set, you gain a new appreciation for it. I hope that as you listen to my speech, you will find the violin instrument more interesting than you'd previously thought. My information comes from the Suzuki Association of the Americas website, as well as my violin teacher, Kimberlyn Lowe, who has played classical violin since the age of 5, and she has taught violin lessons for over 13 years. I also have experience in this area, as I was taught this instrument for 5 years, and I've played in numerous recitals, and I've even earned money playing on the street. So today, you will hear about the history and philosophy of the Suzuki method of playing violin, the intensity and rigor of this method, and the skills that students learn from the Suzuki method. So let's first learn about the history and philosophy of this method of playing the violin, so we can comprehend the purpose behind this technique. So it all started with a Japanese violinist named Shinichi Suzuki, who was born October 17th, 1898. He taught himself to play at the age of 17, and he took lessons from other people and then taught others as well, mainly children. He developed his teaching method over the years, and it's become a standard practice for classical violinists everywhere in the world. The philosophy behind this method is that every child can. My violin teacher, Kimberlyn Lowe, always used to tell me that the philosophy of Dr. Suzuki is that every child can. Every child can learn a musical instrument, every child can achieve, every child can be educated, and every child has talent. So what she always meant by this was that no matter your skill set, no matter what you're good at, you can learn to play the violin, whether it takes longer or faster, whether you learn quickly or more slowly, you can learn at a pace that's right for you, and everyone can learn to play the instrument in this way. So now that you've learned how the Suzuki method started and what purpose it brings to the violin, let's take a look at exactly how strenuous it is to learn these techniques. So once you understand the intensity of the Suzuki method, you can see why the violin is often dubbed the most difficult instrument to play. So in the method of classical violin that I learned to teach, it takes beginners a lot of time to learn how to start playing. For instance, children start playing and it takes them 5 weeks to learn how to hold the violin and the bow. Like, they do not even start playing it. You start with a whole entire month of learning just how to hold the violin and the bow in the proper way, and you make tons of different bow holds, and you learn how to hold it correctly. Another month is just for playing open notes and switching strings. So you play on 2 strings, like the A string and the E string. That's an entire month of practice for a child. And it takes another 3 months for children eventually play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which only uses about 6 or 7 notes. on the violin. So it takes a lot of work to get started, and then you can imagine how strenuous it is later on. Also, there are lots of injuries that you can get from violin that are like highly detrimental to you. My teacher always used to tell me that violin is an actual sport. I don't know how true that actually is, but it does have validity and truth to it. You can gain so many injuries from playing it. You have to have correct posture. If you have incorrect posture, you can develop tendinitis and back joint pain and shoulder pain, and you can just be really harmed for life. For instance, my sister Betsy, she developed tendinitis in her left hand because she was practicing violin over 5 hours for every day. And it was a severe condition that she had to take some rest and just quit playing for like a whole 3 weeks. And even now, her tendinitis will never fully go away, and she still has pain when she plays. So you can get a lot of injuries from playing the violin, which is interesting to hear. So after taking a peek at what difficulties violin students strive to overcome, we can now take this hard work and find out what it brings to students. So let us see the skills that violin students gain from the Suzuki technique and discover the rewards of working hard to learn the violin. So for instance, one great thing that you develop from learning the violin is you develop better coordination and motor skills. I'd like everybody to take their hand and try patting their head and rubbing their tummy at the same time. For some people, it's going to be easier than others. For some people, it's going to be a bit harder. Violinists often have no trouble with this. Even like little children can just immediately start doing this. Because you're doing two different things with your hands at the same time, you learn to develop those motor skills really well. So you also develop improved muscle and mental memory. For instance, I just played over half of an entire piece from memory after only 2 hours of practice. I did not need to look at the music to practice. When I sat down this weekend and I was like, how am I going to play this? I didn't need to look at the music at all. My fingers remembered where to go. My bow hand remembered which direction it needed to go in. And my mind remembered the tune and the notes and how I needed to practice this, even though I had not picked up my violin in over 10 months. So you can really gain improved muscle and mental memory. Also, you have increased pitch recognition, and you tune your musical ear. So that playing that I just did was not the best in tune, but that's okay. Because when you play the violin, you learn to develop your inner ear and really find out what's in tune and what's not. So my harmony ability developed after learning to play with harmonizing violins. I would have to play a melody, and my teacher would be right next to me playing the harmony, and I had to stay on track of my where I was playing, and she had to stay on track of where she was playing. So my ear really developed recognition for harmony, and I can actually sing harmony now because I know what that sounds like, and I can develop proper pitch with my voice. So today, we have learned about the history and philosophy of the Suzuki method, the rigor of this method, and the abilities that students acquire through this method. I'd like you to think back to what you heard me play today. While my playing was, again, certainly not the greatest you've heard in your life, it's a huge step away from being a beginner. I learned to play at this level through the Suzuki teaching method, and now you know that anyone can learn to play like this despite the difficulties along the way. Maybe even consider taking up the violin yourself and enjoy the rewards that playing an instrument can give to everyone.